Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Welcome back.
So, we awoke to snow. Cindy goes and takes a look out the window and says, "Oh my!"
Well, yeah, because the windows are so big and the snow is thick.
Yeah, and it's whipping out there. So, went out to do mantras, and she comes out with bare exposed skin. Meanwhile, it's in the 20s with 50-mile-an-hour winds whipping through. Made it through a round of mantras, but shoot her back in to get covered up a little bit more, silly goose.
Yeah, well, I wanted to do that for Ganesh for some reason to show him that I had some grit.
Yes, she did, and it was interesting too. There's all over the net. There's photos of Putin going and doing his immersion into ice cold waters. It's part of a ceremony that they do in the Eastern Orthodox Church.
I'm sure that was after he wrestled a bear too.
Yes, naked.
Yeah.
Of course, we know. The man's man. So, 6.4 quake hits Argentina, Chile border, and this might have been downgraded, as I'd heard people saying it was closer to a 7. Of course, you just never know with the USGS downgrading service. Damaging buildings and fissuring roads, and there's videos and photos here. Thankfully, there's no reports of anybody being hurt so far, and let's hope that stays the same.
I don't know. I was just thinking, and I wonder if they charge for that downgrading service.
I don't know. I don't know how they could, but anyway, it's all very interesting to see how things roll through. And so this shook Argentina and central Chile late Monday on the 18th, shaking people in both parts of both countries. There was a video that got pulled. I don't know why it got pulled, but there's still a couple other ones that you could check out, and they have links also to the watchers for you guys. This is an area that does get hit by some pretty big quakes from time to time. There's been several aftershocks. When I was just looking, there was like 6 aftershocks that came through, as we could see in here. 7 now that we can see, mostly in the 4s and the 5s. So some pretty good shaking going on down in South America right now.
Yeah, please, I hope they're okay.
And check out this eruption at Etna. Now we're just waiting and seeing what's going to happen with Pele and Vesuvius, because, again, we're talking about Casey's predictions. So a new paroxysmal eruptive episode at Etna, and pretty spectacular. It's pretty kind of beautiful in a volcanish sort of way.
I think so. I love it when I see stuff like that. I just don't want anybody hurt.
Yeah, most definitely. And talk about snow. Heavy snowfall causes massive pileup of 130 vehicles in northeastern Japan. At least one person did pass on, and 10 others sustained injury. Japan has been just pummeled by snow, and these temperatures that are coming in. As we were talking yesterday, when they tell you that this was the hottest year on record, and then like years later, oh well, maybe it wasn't. How many people notice that? Oh well, maybe it wasn't. Just like, letters to the editor and stuff, like, yes, and there's so many statements being made that are completely erroneous, but they're being made as if they're real, and they're not. But it still affects people. It affects the people that are, quote unquote, still in the flock, still zombified, so to speak, that are not awake. They're just not awake. And that's sad. Storm Christopher to bring widespread flooding, or Christoph, I should say, to bring widespread flooding to parts of the UK and Ireland, which is already saturated, so they have a major incident declared there as well. The ground's very, very saturated. We were showing some photos the other day, and so you're going to have more flooding coming in, and it's going to be in that range where you could get some icing, and there's nothing more dangerous than driving on ice.
I know, you guys. Be careful out there.
Most definitely. And we see a new powerhouse storm is exploding in Alaska. And this is part of that, like, you could look at it like a wagon train of just storm systems that are coming through now. And so this will be hammering the Pacific Northwest, Northern Pacific. Extratropical cyclones are becoming a new normal, and so are, the records with the millibars of pressure as well. So, they're getting buried up there. Alaska, interestingly enough, is one of those areas that does get warmer in grand solar minimums.
Yeah, that's kind of nice, but can be scary and mushy too.
Yeah, and you've been there yourself, and you've seen it firsthand.
Oh, it's stunning, but if that ice and stuff were to melt and just create a foot of slush.
Yakutia sees longest cold spell in 14 years as Siberia quivers through abnormally harsh temperatures. So you guys see what I mean? It's like we're seeing record cold come in from many different places, and yet the mainstream wants to tell us that, everything is just coming to a boiling point. It reminds me of, what was that, The Outer Limits, or was it The Twilight Zone, that had the episode where everything was getting hotter and hotter, and the earth was going in towards the sun, and then it turns out to be a dream, and it was actually the opposite. The earth was going away from the sun, and everything was freezing over. Do you guys remember that? And you're all probably too young for that.
I don't.
No? Yeah, I wonder if there's any place we could see some like old Twilight Zone episodes, because they're just they could be prophetic, but also kind of comical.
Yeah, let's find some tonight.
Very cheesy. So, yeah, negative 40 Celsius, which happens to be negative 40 Fahrenheit, during the middle of December here. Very cold, especially for the time of year. And when we jump over to Electroverse, we see negative 73 in Siberia. Now, that is brutal. And as we shared, I think our wind chill here is definitely below zero today. Which you feel when the gusts come through. We have these, what we call whoobies, that we bought for ourselves. This was our Christmas present to each other. You know what Santa Claus looks like? All dressed? Well, that's what these things look like. And they do pretty good, because underneath it, all I have on is a tank top, and was out there. Definitely negative wind chills, and it kept me warm.
Yeah, they do. They do a great job.
Yeah, and we woke up to like 50 something in the cabin today, which didn't feel too bad. You can thicken your blood up and get ready for what's going to come, because if the power is going to be going out soon, we want to be ready for it. And I know I talked to so many people that are living in places like Michigan and Wisconsin and cold areas, right? Say, well, do you have a wood burning stove? No. It's like, because how are you going to stay warm if the power goes out? If you have a generator, that's great. But how much gas do you have? What if there's no more gas available? What if the gas station doesn't have power to pump?
Yeah, there's so many things to consider.
Yeah, we do have a generator. We have some gas. We would use it extremely sparingly. We would just basically use the outdoor freezer to keep things frozen.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yes. So as we see, these records are falling. It is getting pretty damn cold out there in some areas. Now, this was interesting. Humans can move to this floating asteroid belt colony in the next 15 years, so says an astrophysicist, talking about the dwarf planet Ceres, which is, very small. It's like 1/13 the size of the Earth. And they also talk about how it would be unhealthy long term for humans to be on Mars, because of the lack of gravity for our muscles and our bones. We would have to do something to take that into effect. But then there are so many legends that the ancient Martians, when Mars was destroyed, the survivors came to Earth. And, that really rings true to me.
Well, it does to me too. If they had the technology and stuff, why not?
Yeah, it's interesting, and that could be part of everything that we have going on here, as we've listened to some that talk about these tall beings, humanoid beings. I think Corey Good calls them pre-Adamites, that came here from there after there was toasted. And we've talked about how we've remote viewed Nibiru, and Nibiru is more of a ship than a planet now, as it's been so traumatized and abused that the whole ecosystem would be failing if it wasn't for the life support that's been built into it. And that's probably what the powers that be have in store for the Earth if they have their way.
I know, that's why we need to use our energy and sway that timeline.
Most definitely. So they're talking about building these tubes in which we could have complete ecosystems, as you see this illustration. And, of course, this is an artist representation, but perhaps, they know more than, I'm sure they know way more at the top. Again, never a straight answer. And this gets me thinking along different lines. We know Germany lost World War II, but maybe not the NAZI. As we know, they moved on to Argentina, South America, bases in Antarctica, and then, of course, Admiral Byrd's whole thing and the saucers over both LA and DC that were more than likely of NAZI origin, and then absorbed in, and actually having one of the top NAZI scientists running NASA. So, they know more than they're letting on. I mean, because again, they got this technology from beings that are not indigenous to this planet, and also other beings that are not necessarily indigenous to this density of reality.
Well, with this, when I see this stuff, I feel like it's more of a disclosure.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I feel. And then looking at this, and each one of these cylinders is something like this, full of life support systems and all, and being interconnected. Pretty cool. And what this gets me thinking about is, movies like Dark City and the like, where everybody thinks that they're on a planet, but they're not. They're actually on a ship that's controlled by ETs, doing experiments on humans to try to figure out what makes humans the way they are. What causes their emotional responses? Is it something that's in the soul? So it was really curious, because they would take like a couple that was poor, and then they would just freeze everything and switch them into a position where they're rich, and let's see if they react. Like, does everybody react the same, or do people react differently because of the soul?
Well, I think that's more true than we realize.
Yeah, I think so too. I thought it was fascinating. And then when I think of this gets me going to thinking about a New Jerusalem coming down from the sky, which is a perfect cube, and lands on the earth, and it's a city. So here again, this is, again, part of disclosure. Now, it's just fascinating to put all this together, because, I mean, back in the old days, I don't think people could conceive of these things. And then if you go far enough back, then they just knew it outright. Like I was saying, like in the Vedic worldview, you knew that there's other planets out there, and there's life on other planets. It's abundant. There's all sorts of life. They talked about 432,000 different types of humanoid species in our universe. 432,000 different types of humanoid species out there. So, I mean, it was just a given. It was known. Yeah, there's tons of life out there. Yeah, they come here sometimes. We see some of their ships going over our heads.
Well, when I totally believe that, because when I do see beings and entities, every single one looks different, so.
Yeah, and we have a lot of encounters because of, I guess, the energy signature we give off. So we're always having different encounters with different beings. And, it's just like here, some people are really, really nice, and if you had an issue, if you were lost and wandering, they might give you their own coat off their back and even give you a ride, to where you need to go. And then others would look at you in a predatory light. So it's the same thing with these different entities out there. There are some that are very benevolent, and there's others that are opportunistic.
Yeah, there's all different kinds. So if you can keep that in your mind, then you have an understanding of how all these different entities can do all the different things that they do here.
Yeah, very interesting stuff, guys. As always, want to encourage everybody to stay subscribed. I've noticed I've been unsubscribed from a bunch of channels as well, and we don't really get time to watch a lot of videos. We pretty much work from open to close, from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep. Besides meditation and mantras, we're always working. But I did notice that I was unsubscribed, so I was resubscribing to some. So make sure you are subscribed, and thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. If you need to get a hold of us to set up a time for a session, EEARTS at protonmail or evolutionaryenergyarts at gmail.com.
Please, God bless and namaste.
God bless and namaste.